Hello and welcome to the podcast, Jack of all trades, master of none. Today is May 4th. May the Force be with you. So for today's episode, we're actually going to be talking about Star Wars. Specifically, we are going to be talking about the Mandalorians. It is important to note that I am mainly focusing on canon because if I went into Legends, this episode would be way too long. Legends is insane. I also know that a lot of people aren't like hardcore Star Wars fans and do not want to have to differentiate between their Legends knowledge and their canon knowledge. So everything I'm talking about today will be canon with the new like Disney lore and stuff. So starting out with that, Mandalorians in canon are from the planet Mandalore. They are warriors, and you do not have to strictly be from Mandalore to be a Mandalorian. And you do not have to be human. They are majority human, but you do not have to be human. The things that bind together Mandalorians is their culture and their language. Their language of Mandoa is actually a fully functioning language, and there are translators online you can use. It is a gender-neutral language and does have a focus on warrior aspects rather than literally anything else. Another important thing to note is that the beginning of Mandalore and Mandalorian culture is also part of where the Mandalorian clans come in. Clans is just kind of another way to say family, and then each clan was allied with a house, which is similar to a political faction. So for example, Clan Ren was allied with House Vizsla. House Vizsla is not to be confused with Clan Vizsla. Clan Vizsla is the family of Vizsla. The house is the political party, dating back thousands of years. The three most powerful houses at most given times throughout Mandalorian history is House Kryze, House Vizsla, and House Cast. So just keep that in mind because they'll be mentioned. Back to the timeline. Mandalorians settled all of Mandalore and were a warrior-based culture. And once they were done settling on Mandalore, they decided to start conquering other planets. And so the Mandalorian Crusaders were a group of sword-wielding Mandalorian warriors who embarked on these crusades and eventually did meet the Jedi. These Mandalorians were different than the ones we are used to now. They wore robes and did have a similar T-visor helmet, but it wasn't quite like the modern ones that we're used to from Boba and Jango Fett. When the Mandalorians encountered the Jedi, they were at a disadvantage at first because they didn't actually understand how the Force worked and what the Jedi were doing and what they stood for. Unfortunately, in canon, there is not much known about the Crusades other than that is when the Mandalorian and Jedi first encountered each other. These encounters very quickly led to the Mandalorian and Jedi War. This war was a series of battles and encounters between the two that were very bloody and had heavy losses on both sides, mainly because the Mandalorians would rather die in battle than be deemed cowardly. This period of time saw rapid weapons development from the Mandalorians and is also suspected to be the time where they developed their iconic Beskar armor to better protect themselves against lightsabers. It was also during this time that the Mandalorians turned Concordia, a moon of their homeworld, into a mining base. The end of this war was brought about by a massive battle on Mandalore that was so big and catastrophic that it caused a cataclysmic event that completely burned and killed off the majority of life on the planet's surface, to the point where the surface is literally just a lifeless desert, and anyone who lives on Mandalore has to live in completely sealed off dome cities. To the Mandalorians, this was the heaviest loss in their entire history and cemented their generational hatred of the Jedi. Despite this, during the fall of the Old Republic in 1050 BBY, or 1050 years before the Battle of Yavin, Tar Vizsla was the first Mandalorian to be inducted into the Jedi Order. He went to the rank of Jedi Knight and created the Darksaber, a unique black-bladed lightsaber, which then became the symbol of leadership within House Vizsla and a universally recognized symbol of power throughout Mandalore. Now, Tar Vizsla did leave the Jedi Order and came back to Mandalore and became the Mandalore, which is different from Mandalore. It's Mandalore, which is the title for the sole leader of the Mandalorian people. It is not a position that always exists, and it is a position that must be earned. And after Tar Vizsla, it was recognized that you had to be in possession of the Darksaber to become Mandalore. After Vizsla died, his Darksaber was kept in the Jedi Temple until it was taken back by members of House Vizsla during the fall of the Old Republic. So once it was actually crumbling and all that, because it took thousands of years for this thing to actually fall. But when it actually did fall and it was in chaos, House Vizsla went and got the saber back. From this period up until the time of the Clone Wars, it is unclear as to what exactly happened to the Mandalorians. We know there were a lot of civil wars that caused the fracturing of the Mandalorian people into several different groups. New Mandalore was founded, which rejected the old ways and became pacifist. There were some offshoot groups formed that were dedicated to the old way of Mandalore, so really hardcore groups, think Din Djarin's group. Death Watch formed, which was a splinter group that was dedicated to restoring Mandalore to its former glory, so on and so forth, things like that. It was this series of civil wars that led to Duchess Satine Kryze coming into power. She led the new Mandalore movement that made Mandalore into a pacifist world and turned away from the warrior mentality that caused the destruction of their planet. This movement does start before the Clone Wars, but it has significant development during the Clone Wars. This brings us to Episode 2, Attack of the Clones. In this movie, we encounter Jango Fett. In the canon, he is a Mandalorian. He's a Mandalorian warrior who was adopted by Mandalorians after his family was killed, and he was trained to be a Mandalorian. So he is a Mandalorian despite in the Clone Wars the Prime Minister not claiming him, but that was because the Prime Minister was a new Mandalorian and wanted to distance themselves from the warrior culture. Now, during the Clone Wars, the new Mandalorians, led by Duchess Satine Kryze, was neutral throughout the conflict for as much as possible until there was a series of attacks on the planet that caused the Duchess to reach out to the Republic for assistance. These attacks were done by a splinter group called Death Watch. This group wanted to restore Mandalore to its former glory and deemed the pacifist Mandalorians unfit for rule according to their customs. These attacks were done in a secret collusion with Count Dooku so that they would be able to swoop in, save the day, and restore their power in Mandalore. After a series of terrorist attacks and assassination attempts on Satine, they still had not been able to gain power, and so in desperation, their leader Pre Vizsla tried to assassinate Count Dooku, failed, and then allied their forces with Darth Maul. When they joined forces with Darth Maul, Bo-Katan Kryze, who is the sister of Satine, expressed her distrust with Maul and then proceeded to get force choked by Darth Maul in order to keep her quiet, and Vizsla was like, "This is fine." Maul realized that they needed more forces to take over Mandalore, so he started the Shadow Collective, which was just a collective of forces allied with Darth Maul, mainly criminal empires and criminal armies. And then he attacked Mandalore. When Darth Maul had his gangsters attack Mandalore, he had the Mandalorians, Death Watch, attack the gangsters in a completely fake show of like rescue so that Death Watch would have a valid reason to take the throne from Duchess Satine. Once that operation was complete, Pre Vizsla double-crossed Darth Maul and his brother Savage Opress and had them imprisoned, and then the two brothers broke out of prison really quickly because they're literal Sith Lords. Then Darth Maul challenged Pre Vizsla to single combat for leadership of Death Watch and rule over Mandalore. The two of them fought. Maul eventually beat Vizsla and killed him, beheaded that guy in front of everyone, and then declared himself the ruler of Mandalore. At this time, Bo-Katan Kryze and her Night Owls, so the group of Mandalorians that followed her, refused to accept Maul as their ruler, saying that he was an outsider and someone that should not be trusted to lead the Mandalorians, which then caused Death Watch to split into two groups: the Mandalorian Super Commandos, who painted their armor red and swore loyalty to Darth Maul, and then the Mandalorian Resistance, led by Bo-Katan. Bo-Katan did attempt to rescue her sister, but eventually got captured by Darth Maul's forces, but she did get a message to the Jedi Council that she was captured. Obi-Wan then went to rescue the sisters, got captured by Maul, where Darth Maul took Kenobi to the throne room and murdered Satine Kryze in front of him, and she died in his arms. Like, Obi-Wan Kenobi had to hold the closest thing to a lover as she died in his arms, which is devastating. When Obi-Wan left, Duchess Satine's sister, Bo-Katan, requested that he have the Republic invade Mandalore because they could not get rid of Dooku on their own. And Obi-Wan was like, I'll do my best, homie. Really quickly, Darth Maul got the attention of Darth Sidious. Darth Sidious went to where Darth Maul was, killed his brother Savage Opress, and then took Maul and imprisoned him. And then Maul was broken out of prison by the Shadow Collective, his Mandalorian warriors that were still loyal to him. They broke him out, and then he thanked them and started gathering more forces. There was a whole lot of side drama involving Darth Maul, Count Dooku, and Grievous in battles and stuff, but that isn't really important to the overall lore of Mandalore, so we're going to skip over that part. Right before the Siege of Mandalore, Death Watch was part of a various amount of excursions, and during one of those excursions, a Mandalorian warrior saved a child that was about to be killed by a battle droid and flew away with him. That child became Din Djarin, who is the Mandalorian in the Mandalorian series on Disney+. The Siege of Mandalore takes place when Darth Maul leads his Shadow Collective that he has spent so much time building up. He has the Pike Syndicate, Black Sun, all of the biggest crime syndicates have all joined underneath Maul, and so they are now attacking Mandalore and forcing people to live under Darth Maul's rule. This siege prompted Bo-Katan Kryze to request help from Ahsoka Tano, who then went to Coruscant and got help from the Jedi generals. Anakin Skywalker split the 501st Legion, promoting Clone Captain Rex to commander and giving him command over the newly created 332 Division of Clone Troopers, while Ahsoka Tano was officially signed on as an advisor, and they went and fought to free Mandalore. During this fight, Ahsoka and Darth Maul fought back and forth. Ahsoka defeated Darth Maul, didn't kill him, but did defeat him, and relinquished control of Mandalore back to the Mandalorians. Immediately following the siege, the Imperial era of Mandalorian history starts. The Protectors, a Mandalorian group of warriors that are known by very many names: Mandalorian Protectors, Mandalorian Royal Guard, Conquered Dawn Protectors, Protectors of Conquered Dawn, several other names. These people deemed Death Watch an enemy of Mandalore because of their actions during the Clone Wars, trying to orchestrate their own power and control at the cost of Mandalorians' lives. No bueno, not a good idea. This group tried to protect their planet, Mandalore, from the Empire, but was unable to due to the overwhelming forces facing them, and did retreat to a moon of Concord Dawn and stayed there under the leadership of Fenn Rau. When Bo-Katan refused to follow Emperor Palpatine and cooperate with the Empire's cooperation, she was betrayed by Clan Saxon. Gar Saxon was made the Imperial Viceroy and Governor of Mandalore by the Emperor. Bo-Katan was forced into exile, and the rule of Gar Saxon was enforced by Imperial Supercommandos, which were Mandalorian warriors who followed Saxon in the Empire. However, Gar Saxon's rule was challenged when a warrior named Sabine Wren, who was a member of the rebellion, obtained the Darksaber during a battle with Maul on Dothmere. She was also trained to use the Darksaber by Canon Jarrus and Ezra Bridger, and when Sabine Wren returned to her family on Crownest, her mother, Countess Ursa Wren, informed Gar Saxon of her return along with the rebels that she brought with her, and Saxon arrived onto the planet with his Imperial Supercommandos. He declared all of Clan Wren traitors and ordered their immediate termination for harboring fugitives, which is a crazy move, by the way, and then was defeated in single combat by Sabine Wren, and then subsequently killed by Ursa Wren, declaring civil war between Clan Wren and Clan Saxon. Woo! Gar Saxon's brother, Tabir Saxon, became the new leader of Clan Saxon and the Imperial Governor of Mandalore. And then on Mandalore, Clan Wren was joined by Bo-Katan Kryze and the rest of Clan Kryze and the Night Owls, and together they defeated Clan Saxon and the occupying Imperial forces, reinforcing them, killing Tabir Saxon and destroying the arc pulse generator. Side note, that arc pulse generator was invented by Sabine Wren during her time in the Imperial Academy, and it targeted a specific type of armor and would electrocute the person inside of the armor until they were nothing but ash. And this weapon was used on Mandalorians in order to force them into subjugation, and that is horrifying. And also the main reason that Sabine Wren was shunned by her family, because that was a crazy move by Sabine. I mean, she was manipulated into it, but crazy. Bo-Katan was deemed Mandalore when Sabine Wren gave Kryze the Darksaber, and the rallied number of Mandalorian clans united underneath Clan Kryze. Which leads into the final arc of Mandalorian history that we have so far. Bo-Katan, I don't know how to say her name obviously, but she eventually somehow lost the Darksaber to Moff Gideon, who then lost it to Din Djarin, and then that's who has it now. So technically, the Mandalorian is the Mandalore, sole ruler of Mandalore. We have not gotten any additional context to that beyond what is shown in the show. So here we are, and that's pretty much all we have right now. One thing to note, the group that Din Djarin hails from, the Children of the Watch, also known as Followers of the Way, were an Orthodox religious group of Mandalorians who were dedicated to following the ancient ways of the Mandalore. They were often described as religious zealots, cult-like, and other things of that nature. Some things to note about the Children of the Watch. To them, the Darksaber holds no significant value, and also station or bloodline was not something that really rang any bells with them. So when Bo-Katan Kryze came in with the bloodline that she has and the quest for the Darksaber, Din Djarin really was like, what the fuck are you doing all this for? That does not make any sense. It's also funny because Din Djarin simply did not know the significance of the Darksaber other than the fact that it was a weapon. In the end, though, the Children of the Watch did agree to help Kryze's forces in the reconquest of Mandalore. So, happy ending, ? That's all we have on Mandalorian history right now with the Disney canon. As previously stated, Legends lore goes absolutely crazy. And please note that I did do a lot of overviewing. There are a lot of details that I didn't talk about because this is already getting to be too long and I didn't want to have to lengthen it even more. If you do want a part 2, or if you want to focus on a specific era or literally anything in Star Wars, let me know. I love talking about Star Wars. But yeah, thank you for joining me today. And come back for the next episode of the podcast. Yay!